in the case of Academy Award-winning director Jonathan Glazer, this is my rant, a Jewish British filmmaker who makes a fantastic movie, Zone of Interest. I recommend everyone see it, about the complicity of those who were Nazis or Nazi adjacent during a genocide. And specifically, he does a fictionalized account of a Commander Haas. And I don't if you haven't, don't worry, I'm not spoiling it, but the movie doesn't show you what's happening in Auschwitz, which is next door. You hear it. What you see is this idyllic, brilliant landscape, garden and animals and kids. And the movie shows the dehumanization and what happens with the dehumanization, even to the people who are perpetrated. And in his Oscar speech, which I thought was a lovely speech, which he read with his hands trembling,
yes,
he showed empathy towards the victims of the October 6th Hamas attack and to Palestinians, and said that he would not allow his Jewishness and the Holocaust to be weaponized to further an occupation that has fueled endless cycles of violence. I thought it was a very lovely sentiment. The only person to say anything during this ongoing, what some people call a genocide in Gaza, that has killed 30,000 people. He again is Jewish American, the Jewish British filmmaker, made a movie about the Holocaust, and as of yesterday, 450 Jewish American Hollywood creatives and professionals, that's what they refer to themselves as, signed an absurd letter. I actually read the letter. I'm like, if I was a publicist, I'm like, please don't sign your name. And I think they should fire all their publicists. They signed this absurd letter, pretty much signaling him out, not mentioning anything about what's happening in Gaza, putting occupation in quotation marks. And essentially, the reason why I think we should be worried about it is it's a signal. You better stay in your lane. You better stay quiet.
Yeah.
Because we're going to go after Jonathan Glazer. And if we're going after Glazer and Melissa Barrera, the friggin' face of a lucrative reboot Scream franchise, then what the hell? What's going to happen to you and me, Francesca?
No, first of all, I think you and me have seen our friend Mehdi Hassan lose his platform. So you and me have examples even closer to home than that. But me being in LA and trying to, break in and basically like sell scripts and be friendly with folks here, like it is a warning shot and it is incredibly scary. And I was going to bitch about that as well. But I think what it shows is how mad, just in general, how mad, not Jewish Americans specifically, but how mad people were about Zionists, how mad Zionists were that there was even an applause. Because that, to me, more than the speech, the fact that people stopped him and applauded was absolutely groundbreaking and shows you that the tides are turning on this issue and you can speak out against occupation and genocide and not be an anti-Semite. But what happens is even when Jews do it, what happens? They get called anti-Semitic and or not Jewish. Oh, you're not Jewish.
Capo, or they call them capos, which is like Jewish collaborators or un-Jews. It is, and I always tell my Jewish friends, I've been telling them for the last 5 months, and on the DL, we have these conversations with Jewish American leaders. I'm like, this is bad for Jews. Like, at the end of the day, it's terrible for Palestinians, terrible for Muslims, those who look Muslim, terrible for anyone who espouses anything for pro-Palestine, terrible for free speech, terrible for democracy, also really bad for Jews.
Yes.
And
Matt tells me this all the time.
It's a feast moment for white nationalists. White nationalists are going to feast on this.
Yeah. Oh, well, and Matt tells me this all the time because he's like, what I'm really pissed about is that conflating Israel and Judaism and seeing what Israel is doing now makes people hate Jews. Like, he's not afraid for his life or anything, but he's just like, this breeds anti-Semitism. And it always has. It always has, in terms of Israel's liability to everybody, and specifically the Jewish people. But here's the statement. I just want to double down on how bad it was. We're Jewish creatives, executives, and Hollywood professionals. We refute our Jewishness being hijacked for the purpose of drawing a moral equivalence between a Nazi regime that sought to exterminate a race of people and an Israeli nation that seeks to avert its own extermination. You don't think that Hitler was also worried about, he was saying like white genocide. Hitler was worried about the continuation and the purity of the German race. The idea that it's just so annoying. It's so ridiculous to me that they're going to say we're averting our extermination by in their words, doing this war, eradicating Hamas. But what we all see is by doing extermination.
But
We're
look at
going
the
to
next line.
exterminate first. You can read it.
Every civilian death in Gaza is tragic. Israel is not targeting civilians. It is targeting
They're
Hamas.
dying on their own.
Yeah, and then the next paragraph, the use of the words like, quote, occupation to describe an indigenous Jewish people defending a homeland that dates back thousands of years and has been recognized as a state by the United Nations distorts history. It gives credence to the modern blood libel that fuels a growing anti-Jewish hatred around the world, in the United States and in Hollywood. It's like, my God, why would you sign this? Why? And then they did. 450 people signed it. And you're like, you need a better publicist.
You do.
It's
And
painful.
it's painful. And it makes me sad because I actually want to have empathy for people who, are in the cult of Zionism and do conflate Zionism and Judaism wrongly. And again, these are 450 Jews. I'm not what do you say other than look at your Jewish brothers and sisters who are leading this struggle to
Yeah.
stop this genocide? Like, you do not represent everyone. And it's such a exercise in fragility that you saw it to throw this Oscar winner under the bus, this filmmaker who brought to light this incredible story again about what happens when you turn a blind eye to human extermination, and you throw that person under the bus. I mean, is there anyone who will not be a casualty with their professional, their character, their life, who will not be a casualty for the cause of Israel? It's just,
And he was empathetic. He was like, his whole speech was about empathy towards all people there. And I remember, look, I'll share with you and your listeners, several years ago, I had a conversation with Jonathan Greenblatt of the ADL. I know him.
yeah,
And ADL, about I think 5 or 6 years ago, if you remember this, Francesca, they went after Keith Ellison. Keith Ellison was the first
yeah,
Muslim ever elected to office. He's now the lieutenant governor of Minnesota, something like that.
yeah, yeah. I think so.
Yeah, and progressive, Black American, and they used a known Islamophobe, his website, Steve Emerson, and some audio leak of Keith talking to Muslims and just very casually saying, "Listen, this is how business works. AIPAC does this. You got to do what AIPAC does. AIPAC has a lot of influence." He wasn't even like doing the conspiracy theory. He goes, "Nope, AIPAC does it."
Yeah,
And they used that distorted to say he was anti-Semitic. And I warned him at that time. I said, Jonathan, if you're saying that Keith Ellison, a man who has the backing of many Zionist Jews, a man who is against BDS, a man who is for a two-state solution, a man who has visited Israel, a man who has visited Auschwitz, if he's not kosher enough for you,
yeah,
do you not see what you're doing? That
yeah.
means no one's kosher, and then you're making frenemies and enemies out of potential allies. And it's not just the Muslims and Arabs, because we were the lowest hanging fruit. I'm like, progressives and Black folks are paying attention to this.
What's going on, Frantifa? If you haven't already, subscribe to this channel right now. Hit that button. And also, you can become a patron and support the show every single week. Get access to bonus episodes and exclusive merchandise. Patreon.com/Bitchuation Room. Do it.